You saw the interview last night. You know I had a million questions for John Cleese, Terry Gilliam, and Terry Jones from Monty Python's Flying Circus, most of them fan questions. But Terry Gilliam had one question for me. How come that Colin Powell interview about the terror industrial complex didn't become a bigger story? Our number one story, what Colin Powell interview about the terror industrial complex? In a 2007 interview with GQ magazine, the former Secretary of State, strikingly honest, outlined an entire aspect of the nexus of politics and terror. And even in this day of instant information, this modern day version of President Eisenhower's farewell address and his warning about a military industrial complex barely made a dent in the mainstream media, possibly because, in effect, Powell buried his own lead. In that interview that ran in October 2007's issue of GQ, he said he was, quote, sorry that he gave the world the wrong information at the UN, the information regarding the threat that Iraq supposedly posed that led us to war. We reported Powell's admission on this program the week of September 10th, 2007, and we excerpted some of Powell's remarks to GQ. What is the greatest threat facing us now? People will say it's terrorism. But are there any terrorists in the world who can change the American way of life or our political system? No. Can they knock down a building? Yes. Can they kill somebody? Yes. But can they change us? No. Only we can change ourselves. So what is the great threat we are facing? But perhaps if we had all just dug a little deeper into that article, we would have noticed that Powell went a little further. The only thing that can really destroy us is us. We shouldn't do it to ourselves, and we shouldn't use fear for political purposes, scaring people to death so they will vote for you, or scaring people to death so that we create a terror industrial complex. Powell, of course, borrowing that phrase first used by President Eisenhower in 1961. In his farewell address to the nation, the president warned of the military-industrial complex, a concept that perhaps he knew something about, considering that prior to being president, he was a five-star general in the Army during World War II. In the councils of government, he said, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist. We must never let the weight of this combination endanger our liberties or democratic processes. Shortly after Powell's comments to GQ were published, he gave a speech at the University of Oklahoma. The reporters at OU's campus newspaper, the Oklahoma Daily, picked up on Powell's remarks and asked the former Secretary of State what everybody else did not. Just what did he mean by terror industrial complex?
We're spending an enormous amount of money on Homeland Security, and I think we should spend whatever it takes. But I think we have to be careful that we don't get so caught up in trying to throw money at the terrorists and counter-terrorist problem that we're essentially creating an industry that will only exist as long as you keep the terrorist threat pumped up.
The follow-up question was, do you see warning signs that this country is in fact headed in that direction?
We spent a lot of money to put a lot of equipment out there, counterterrorism equipment, but now we need more money to keep that equipment running. Well, let's make sure that what we have sent out there is absolutely essential. And let's be cautious in our appropriations and in spending money. I don't think we're out of control. I think we had to respond in an aggressive way, but it's now been 6 years. Let's make sure that we are spending money on the right things and not spending money just to spend money.
Let's make sure that we are spending money on the right things and not spending money just to spend money. Halliburton, no bid contracts, not to mention all the Bush-Cheney cronies that had financial stakes in the very complex Mr. Powell warned us about. Well, what can a new administration learn from this 2-year-old warning? To the growing chorus chiding the president to hurry up and decide about the strategy going forward in Afghanistan, take note. Beware of the terror industrial complex. And my apologies for not reporting this to you in September 2007.